He's out there. Franz-Albrecht and his team of sharpshooters chase the dream. Wild Boar Fever season premiere Monday, July 8th. Stream the new season exclusively on MyOutdoorTV. The following is a MyOutdoorTV original series.
Aimpoint's Wild Boar Fever 9 is brought to you by Aimpoint, the future in sight. By Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. By Harkala, trust your instinct. And by Sauer, premium comes standard.
Across the European continent, wild boar populations are exploding. In recent decades, numbers of wild boar are not counted in the thousands, but in the millions. Driven shoots are the style of choice across several countries, and their numbers and level of professionalism has increased alongside the numbers of wild boar. The sport is entering a golden age with displays of marksmanship to match. This is Wild Boar Fever. In the last few decades, changes in agricultural practices have combined with unseasonably mild winters to create an explosion of wild boar numbers across Europe. Wild boar have been a traditional game species for centuries on the continent. Driven shoots are becoming more and more common as boar populations spread. A driven shoot is a complex, well-planned affair, requiring beaters, highly trained dogs, and shooters all working in concert together. But when it works, the results can be spectacular. Like in North America, wild boar are considered an invasive pest species, causing extensive damage to farm fields, destruction of habitat, and deadly car wrecks. For these reasons, wild boar numbers must be managed. But that has proven to be a boon for the hunter. As driven boar shoots increased in popularity across Europe, so did a program called Wild Boar Fever. In the last 10 years, audiences across the continent have watched some of the finest riflemen shooting at the highest levels. One man in particular, Franz-Albrecht Spielberg, wowed viewers with some incredible wild boar shooting, offering European hunters a look at what is possible with dedication and practice.
I was a fan of the show. I watched all the films and I was excited about all the scenes that I saw and all the wild boar that were shown, and that was sort of the time when I was really fully engulfed in the whole wild boar experience. And those films, they just kept me going. And since then, I think we've done 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And yes, wild boar has this thing about it that it doesn't really get boring.
Franz-Albrecht immediately connected with viewers by sharing his vast knowledge of what is required for success on a driven shoot.
The sun has come out. We have one more drive left. It's probably going to take an hour and a half, maybe. We can see the beaters walking behind us at the moment, and we've been told that they're going to beat away from us, but the wind is in our favor, and as you know, the wild boar, they like to come back through the beater line. I think this could be very interesting. We've also been told that if we see that the wild boar are taking a different path, so if they're maybe 100 meters up or 200 meters down, we can move our stand. And I think it looks very promising, but with wild boar, you just never know where they're going to go.
Regardless of the country, every day of driven boar hunting begins very much the same. Before the scores of beaters, dogs, and shooters take to the woods, the entire group gathers to hear the rules of the hunt, and most importantly, the safety briefing.
From a safety perspective, that of course is the #1 thing on these shoots, and especially when you have, let's say, 30, 40 guns out there scattered around the forest, you have maybe 100 dogs in the drive and you have 25 dog handlers and maybe even some beaters and more people or whatever, it's very difficult to keep the safety at the highest level at all times.
We mark the line with the hunters, the tree mark with the big red lines. It's in between their two lines, it's forbidden to shoot. You have enough space to shoot in front and the back. I hope to make a good hunt today. Thank you.
That focus on safety continues when the hunters reach their shooting stands. Every drive is different, and a review of the specifics of each stand is critical before the gun is ever loaded.
We have a beautiful open stand. We'll be able to see the boar coming from quite far away. And hopefully they will enter up the valley in front of us. I cannot really shoot to my right or left because we have the neighboring line. And even though I can't see them, I'm not going to shoot in those directions. For example, here on my left, you can see a red mark. That indicates where my neighbor Yong is. And on the other side above the hill, below the hill, I have Michael, so I'm not going to be shooting in that direction at all. Behind me, I have an open horizon, which means that I do not have a back stop for the bullet. So I will not be shooting at all behind. Group of females on our right and one single male came straight for us. I had quite a nice gap in between the trees and I just followed through with my sight from the middle of the boar to the front and slowly squeezed the trigger.
Equally important are the ethics of good hunting. Driven boar require not only precision shooting, but smart decisions on which animals to take, and more importantly, which animals to let pass.
For me, that's actually where the shooting has already started, even though you don't even have your gun in your hand. Because the quicker you can distinguish between right size, right sex, safety, etc., the more time it leaves you to actually make the shot. You know what I mean? So like if it takes you a long time to distinguish, is it really a male? Is it a female? Is it a male? Is it a female? I'm not really sure. Ah, okay, it is actually a male. By that time, the boar would have left the perfect place where you could have shot it, and then you've got to make a very difficult shot with a higher risk of not killing instantly or maybe even missing or wounding that boar, and that kind of ruins your chance of making that particular situation a success.
In order to fully understand safe, ethical shooting on driven boar, you must first understand the terms commonly used to describe them. The language is German, but the terms are used throughout Europe.
On a European basis, if you kind of talk about a Keiler or a Frischling, it's quite fun how many other countries who are not really German will understand what you're talking about. So a Frischling is everything from 0 to 1 year old. Once it hits the age of 1, it becomes an Überläufer. And once that goes from 1 up to 2. Once it hits the age of 2, the male boar become Keilers and the female boar become Bachen. So female boar in America would be a sow. We call it a Bache. And what you call a boar, which is a male boar, is a Keiler once it reaches the age of 2. Before that, all of them are Überläufer, and before that, all of them are Frischling.
The challenges of hunting driven boar mean the hunter must use every option at their disposal to maximize success. Long before the season begins, the savvy shooter will put in time at the range, practicing in as realistic a situation as possible. Moving targets help to refine a shooter's lead and swing. Shooting cinemas are popular in many places in Europe, allowing for live fire exercises on moving targets. And Aimpoint's new virtual reality experience is fast becoming a crucial tool in keeping a hunter's skills sharp regardless of the season. A fast cycling bolt rifle allows the hunter quick follow-up shots on wounded game, or the option to take multiple bore from a single sounder. And detachable magazines ensure fresh ammo is always at hand. The advantage of having both eyes open while using an Aimpoint sight means the hunter is able to be more aware of their surroundings. The result is a faster acquisition of the target and better view of the obstacles and obstructions. A fast bullet means the hunter requires less lead, improving their chances in this game of split seconds. Hornady's full bore ammunition offers controlled expansion and deep penetration for safe, ethical kills. Even clothing designed for functionality on driven hunts comes into play if you want to shoot wild boar at a high level. A hunter's success is often determined long before the start of a drive. Having the right gear is a start, but there are several actions to increase your chances once the boar are in the setup. How you prep your stand and study the area beforehand means greater knowledge of the terrain and surroundings when a wild boar appears.
We have a long road passing our stand. We have some nice open woods on both sides. It looks open because you can see very far, but there's actually a lot of trees. So I think what's quite important is I've measured my distances on the road so I know how far a few trees are. I take trees that you can easily remember, and I know 50 meters, 75, 100, 125, so I know what the distance is when the boar comes. So I know about how much lead I have to give them. And then also what I do, I look at the forest very, very closely, and I find gaps where I know that I can shoot quite well when the boar come running through. So I put up my gun and I follow the boar, and I know when the gaps are coming that are a little bit wider than the rest of them. So that makes it easier for me to know where to shoot before the boar actually comes. And you kind of take a photograph of each part of your stand in your head, so you know about what happens. And once the drive is begun and you're about halfway through the drive, you usually know about where the boar will come because they take about the same kind of paths or trails. So once you're halfway through, you get a better idea what's going to happen or how they're going to run. If you see them at all, most of the time you don't get to see them very much. But we're ready now, and we've got a little bit of clouds. It's warmer today, but it looks good. Very good.
Prepping yourself before the hunt even starts by going to train. Then when you get onto your stand, prepping the stand as much as you can, measure the different distances, know your shooting lanes, prep your stand, etc. All those things that you can do before will help you in that last split second when you really have to take the shot. It will make it much, much easier to kind of execute that in the best way possible.
A driven hunt for boar is an all-day affair. From the morning safety briefing, the hunters are driven to their shooting stands for the first drive of the day. Depending on the country and terrain of the hunting grounds, there will be 1 or 2 drives in the morning before the hunters are treated to a warm lunch in the field. After some camaraderie amongst hunters and tales from the morning's adventures, the hunters are ready to get back in the stands for the afternoon drives. One of the great things about being in a quality hunting area is the chance to see a variety of game from the stands. While the beaters are concentrating on pushing boar through the setups, the hunter may see roe deer, fallow deer, and magnificent red deer, known in other places as stags. Every country has different management needs with respect to wild boar populations. Specific rules about sex and size of boar to be taken are given by the outfitter at the start of each hunt. But in areas where the boar populations have become unbalanced, outfitters will often request that all boar are taken, regardless of sex and size. Franz-Albrecht experienced this on a recent trip to Romania, where despite the snow and cold, boar numbers had skyrocketed. But even when the rule is that all boar are fair game, there are still ethical considerations to weigh before pulling the trigger.
Adrian called us up around Christmas time and said that he still has a lot of boar to shoot. Because the winter was so mild, it was very difficult to get hold of them. And now we have some snow, so he knows much better where the boar are. And so we've come to see whether we can help him out. And he says that there's so many boar, he would like us to shoot all boar. Of course, only females once all the youngs have been shot, but otherwise all single boars can be shot because it's an overpopulation. And my strategy, I think, will be if we have a group of boar coming, I'll scan the group for any big males. If I see a big male, I'll try and shoot it. If there are no big males, I'll immediately focus on the small ones. But Romania is so famous for the big old males that that's really the main attraction, is to try and find one of these old males. But it's just such a pleasure to be able to hunt in snow again. We really haven't had much snow in the last few years. And that's what wild boar hunting really is. You know, you get this contrast between the big black boar and the white snow. That just has a very special feeling to it.
Here, Franz-Albrecht is in the perfect position to choose which boar he will take from the sounder. With a complete overview of the woods in front of him, Franz-Albrecht waits for a good look at boars entering his field of view.
Not the first. The one in the back.
Yeah.
Big one.
You get the last one?
Huh?
You get the last one?
Yeah, it's just lying there.
Okay.
It's amazingly cold. It's maybe only -7, but due to this wind, the chill factor must be around -20. And but it's just such a privilege to be able to hunt these boar in this type of weather. In the snow, it's just the way it's supposed to be done, and I really enjoy it.
When the final horn blows and the drives are wrapped for the day, the hunter will climb down from the stand to inspect the boar. The animals are tagged, and records of age, location, and shot placement are all logged in the outfitter's book. The meat from the entire boar taken on driven shoots is processed and sold commercially in restaurants across Europe. The Europeans hold strong hunting traditions, focusing on respect for the animals taken during the day. A branch is placed in the animal's mouth, the hunter's offering of a symbolic last meal. Another branch is dipped in the blood of the game and placed in the hunter's cap with the traditional greeting heard on driven shoots.
Meidmans Dank.
The day ends with all of the hunters, beaters, and dog handlers assembled to pay their respects to the wild game. The animals are laid out by species, sex, and size in what is known as a tableau. Here, the outfitter and hunters give short speeches, honoring the game and thanking everyone for doing their part to conduct a safe and ethical shoot. After a long day of field, the music, the fires, and the assembled game create an experience unique to European-driven hunts. The cold and discomfort of the day is forgotten, replaced with the excitement and pride in a day of good shooting. And even newcomers and novice hunters find themselves fully taken with wild boar fever. The most important factors on any driven shoot, and any hunt for that matter, are that of ethics and safety. The animals deserve an immediate, clean harvest, and the safety of the beaters, dogs, and other hunters must be paramount. Franz-Albrecht Oettingen-Spielberg grew up in the world of driven game shoots, but such familiarity isn't taken for granted. Whether this is your first driven shoot or you're an old hand, every member of the team is involved in the morning's safety briefing.
You would think that the beginners are the ones that make the most mistakes in terms of safety or doing something wrong. But you know that feeling when you're in such a routine of doing something and you do it almost every weekend or every day in particular. Reiteration of what safety is about. I find when I come to a shoot, I really try and remind myself what could happen if something went wrong. And I really try and listen to what the people are saying about safety, even though I've heard it probably hundreds of times.
In the briefing, the outfitter explains the rules of the hunt, the size and sex of boars to be taken depending on their management needs.
Okay, we have pigs and jackals. Don't shoot the leading mama out of a group.
Nope.
Don't shoot any big mamas.
Nope.
Single. Shoot, when you're shooting on the line, 45 degrees away from your neighbors. Only load the gun when you're on the stand, unload when you're going off the stand. If you've wounded something, wait until he comes to track it. I mean, he said don't shoot the leading mama.
Yeah.
If you've got a huge mama coming by itself, maybe also don't shoot that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think they have so many boar, they want us to shoot some. Yeah.
This focus on safety continues once the hunters reach the shooting stands. They are instructed which directions they can safely shoot and which are to be avoided by one of the local guides. On some drives, the hunters are spread out, far from any neighboring stands. But in others, you'll find a line of stands running down a clearing or small forest road. Here, very specific rules apply. When the hunters are placed in a line, here marked with gray, they are only allowed to shoot at a 45-degree angle from the front of the stand, marked here with red. In this way, any bullet missing or passing its intended target will have a safe backstop with no risk to the neighboring shooter. In thick woodlands, the hunters are made aware of their neighbors, but a visual acknowledgement is part of every pre-drive preparation.
I'm just waving to y'all, who's my neighbor, because we've been put on these stands and they said we can move into any direction that we want as long as we make sure that the neighbor knows where we are. So it's just a safety precaution to make sure that he knows where I am and I know where he is.
Experienced hunters take into account the terrain and weather conditions when thinking about safe shooting. When the weather goes sub-zero, otherwise harmless puddles of mud become rock-hard ground for ricochets and deflections. Gravel roads are another factor to consider before pulling the trigger.
I had one come down between me and Franz. I managed to make a good shot. We had a Überläufer Keiler come right in between Duncan and me. Duncan did a great shot on it. He waited until it was over the road, which is very important for safety. And then he really hit it in a perfect place and it rolled straight over. I've been given a stand in this valley. And I have a valley going down the left. And on the left-hand side, on the ridge, I have Oscar, maybe 300-400 meters down. So for me, at any angle into the valley, I'm not going to shoot. Besides, straight down. Because anywhere in this zone, the bullet can detract either from a tree or from a stone, or even if I shot an animal, the bullet can come out at angles that us humans would never expect it to be. So I'd always rather be safe than sorry, you know.
It's been said the most important shots are the ones you don't take. And this is doubly true on driven game.
I think you probably do remember the ones that you do take and that you are successful on, but the shots that you don't take that could have been dangerous either to dogs or humans, those are the most important shots you didn't take in your life.
There's a dog. I don't like this.
Once the bullet is out of your barrel, you can never bring it back.
I can hear the beaters in the background getting closer now. So now I can really only shoot straight ahead of us, into the ground. I don't want to be doing any more flat shooting.
As the beaters approach the stands, the guns are unloaded and the shooters will point out where their boar have fallen.
Monsieur? Yeah, I think so.
After dismounting from the stand, the hunter will then reload for his approach to the boar. Those big teeth, so coveted by boar hunters, can do a great deal of damage, and it's always wise to check each boar before unloading your gun.
We just heard the horn, and we're gonna approach the big boar first. And just to be safe, I think he's down, 99% sure. But you never know, so no matter how big the boar is, even if it's just a small one, I always like to load my gun while I'm approaching them. And it's just very important because when you get, after you then see that they're down, when you approach them, then it's sometimes important to really remember to unload your rifle again, because you can get so excited about everything that then sometimes you kind of forget about it. So when you do arrive at the boar and he's down, start to really unload immediately again.
The ability to quickly class and sex the age of wild boar on the hoof is a crucial skill on driven hunts. Boar are generally classified as follows. Yearlings, known as Frischling, are the very young, less than a year old, and usually trailing close behind a sow boar, or Bacha. An Überlaufer is anything from 1 to 2 years, and a Keiler is a mature male boar 2 years or older. Classing boar can be a challenge. At first glance, they all look pretty much the same. Franz-Albrecht understood early on the faster and better he got at classing his quarry, the more time he'd have for the shot.
It was very clear on, for example, on a morning, the owner of the shoot would tell you, you can shoot male boar 60 kilograms and above, but female boar only 60 kilogram and below. Before you start shooting at a boar, you would have to sex that boar. Is it a male, is it a female, and then size it. And that's very difficult because in each region of Germany, and especially in all the different countries, boar look incredibly different. When you see a group of boar, it just looks like a lot of boar, but when you look closer, you can really distinguish between, ages, sizes, and sexes.
Überläufer, we shot the Überläufer on our right. They were a little bit too far, most of them, because of the danger of our next shooter. But one Frischling was close enough to take, so we took it. But there's a lot of wild boar and they're really moving.
The newcomer to driven shoots will benefit from having more experienced eyes with them in the stand.
This one. No, female or not. Shoot her. Okay. Female. Run by. Thank God Christian identified that for me.
Really 50% before you even pick up your gun is sexing, sizing, doing that as quickly as possible, then putting up the gun, and then that's where it starts of which strategy am I going to use to shoot that boar.
We had a group with females and 2 Keilers come by. Actually 3 Keilers, or at least 2 Überläufer Keilers and 1 Keiler. The first Überläufer Keiler was quite far back in the group, and then the other 2 Keilers were more in the middle. And I didn't want to shoot the small Frischling because they're too small to eat. So it's better for them to grow a little bit more, and the winters here are not so strong, so they'll survive the winter. And I didn't want to shoot any of the females because I didn't know which piglets were with which female, so I just chose the males in that group.
How you plan your shots plays into ethics as well. It is the hunter's responsibility to take their quarry in a way that is both humane to the animal and in keeping with the overall management plan of the area.
If you have a female 2 to 3 year old big sow, or what we would call a bache, and she comes with a sounder of, let's say, 3 or 4 of her young that are less than 1 year old but still decent size to take, we would never shoot the female first. We'd always try and take all the young and then shoot the female, because we believe that the young still need to be guided by that female, and our ethical rules are to shoot the youngs and then take her if you still have the time. But you don't do it the other way around.
That was one of the biggest females I've ever seen. She doesn't have the camel bumps, and you can see that just in front of her back legs. She didn't have the tuft of hair, and she didn't have any teeth. So if you put those 3 things together, you know it's not a Kyla. And she had the bushy tail, so it was an old female. And even though we're supposed to shoot females here, on a schneise like this or on a small opening, you never know. The frischling might be just 10 or 20 meters behind her. Always look at these 3 things. That's the male parts. I look at the camel back and I look at the teeth. They were 3 Überläufer, maybe 50, 60 kilo. But they were very, very far. And I really didn't feel I have a safe shot. I think the chance of missing or wounding it would have been too high. So I decided not to shoot, and I think that's, you know, even though you try and get what you can get, there's no trying, and when you're dealing with animals, that's what I think anyway. And when I take a shot, I really want to make sure that the animal is dead before it hears the shot. So I try and take them as much in front here as I can.
An aim-point red dot sight is a tremendous advantage when hunting wild boar. Having the ability to keep both eyes open offers an unlimited field of view, crucial when multiple boar enter the setup. This increased confidence and hit probability leads to better shooting overall and cleaner harvests of wild boar. When the drive is finished, a guide will come to each hunter's stand for a quick debriefing and accounting of the drive. Any possible wounded animals will be followed up with bloodhounds, ensuring nothing suffers and nothing goes to waste.
We try and make sure that every shot is accountable for, and that we really chase up all the different possibilities that could have happened in that situation.
Unlike North America, wild game that is harvested will find its way to tables across Europe.
What you really want at the end, you want animals that are shot really well with good shot placement, because we want to sell the meat, we want to eat the meat, and of course a well-placed shot will give you a higher value, either for you to eat yourself or to sell it on and put it on the market.
Ethics also come into consideration when taking into account the amount of pressure put on the animals in a given area. These large driven shoots are extremely disruptive, but allow all of the hunting to take place in a minimal amount of time.
In an ideal world, on that one day that you come into that area is the only time in that particular year where that drive is being done. And if everything goes well, you'll be able to take that quota off within those 1.5 hours.
The view of what is ethical and what is not varies from country to country and region to region. But in Europe, these standards have worked well to humanely manage wild game.
In every place that I've been and that I've hunted in, every culture of hunting is completely different. In New Zealand, it's completely normal to harvest animals from a helicopter. If you explain that to a German, they would fall off their seat and never talk to you again because they think it's the most unethical thing to ever do in your life. There's so many different ideas and so many different red lines being drawn in the hunting world. And I've kind of tried to go down some routes and to try to find out what my thinking is. And the thing that I'm at the moment is, I think I'm gonna try and accept as many cultures and as many traditions in as many countries as possible. And for me, the red line is that when I personally pull the trigger, I want to make sure at the highest percentage possible that it's an instant kill.
To the novice hunter, a driven shoot may look relatively easy. Shooters climb into their stands before the drive begins, waiting for a line of beaters and dogs to start pushing them toward the line. Some might even think there's little actual hunting involved. But to a more nuanced eye, the skills and strategies of the hunt and of shooting become almost endless, with constant room for self-improvement.
It's not about trying to shoot the fastest boar at the longest distance. It's about hunting. It's not a shooting competition that is happening there. It's like you're hunting.
Like any skill you want to learn, low-stakes practice is the best place to start. Before you raise your rifle on any live animal, time at the range, shooting in as realistic conditions as possible is both ethical and well spent. For Franz-Albrecht, that range time may not even include a lot of live fire. Working on your swing and dry firing the rifle pays dividends when training for driven shoots.
And you can identify your own mistakes much, much better by dry firing than by actual firing rounds and always looking, where did I hit, where did I hit? It's not where you hit. The mistakes happen back here, where how the gun is mounted, how you pull the trigger, etc. And you don't need to see a bullet hole to know what you're doing wrong.
Two at the same hole. Right, congratulations.
The important thing is that the line, it's the same line, you know? And there you see it's the middle.
Yeah, and the same.
And that's the same. It's the line. I'm not so worried about a little bit of difference here, but the height is the important.
Yeah.
Another option for those wanting to up their shooting skills is Aimpoint's virtual reality experience. Using state-of-the-art technology, hunters are immersed in dynamic and realistic hunting scenarios. The sights, sounds, and challenges of a driven boar shoot all come to life. When it's pre-season or you can't get to the range, there's no better tool to enhance your driven hunting skill set. When it is time for live fire, practicing in as realistic conditions as possible will make a huge difference in how well your range time translates to the stand.
When you're on that stand and you got boar coming, the last thing you want to think about is like, so where was my cartridges and where's my range? All of those things need to happen as part of a reflex for you to be able to concentrate on what you're doing with that particular boar.
Good to have a training here. I'm very happy about this because you have a last test before the hunt tomorrow, and it's good to concentrate and to check your rifle and of course yourself, and so I'm really looking for tomorrow.
Driven boar hunting requires a wide range of skills, and many of them are put to use long before the hunt begins. As you wait for the beaters to get underway, prepping your stand and studying your setup means faster and more informed decisions when the boar are heading your way.
I'm just gonna show you a few things that I do when I get to the stand. Some of them might be obvious, but I'm still gonna show them. So here on the stand, for example, I have dry leaves. It can be a nuisance when the boar come and you have to change your position. And they hear that, then they might change directions. So what I do is I take them off when I get to the stand. Now I know that no matter where I move on my stand, I'm gonna be quiet. Another important thing to remember is that for me the hunt starts when I get out of the car, not when I hear the beaters start, because there might be boar close by in a thicket and they can hear everything. They're orientating themselves where the guns are being placed where the cars are going. And very often they will start moving before the beaters actually start moving. So it's crucial to be incredibly quiet and silent when you're loading your rifle. Talk in a silent voice and just move very, very quietly. So I look at the boar, I try and sex it, and I also try and size it. Then if I think it's the boar that I want to shoot, I let it come. And when it's, for example, behind a big tree, and we have a lot of trees, I'll slowly rise up. And I'll position my feet into the section where I want to shoot it. So maybe the boar is coming from over there, but I want to shoot it here. I will position my feet into that direction, and I will turn, and I will look at the boar, and I will watch it. And when it gets into that section, again, hopefully when it's behind a tree so it doesn't see me, I'll pick up the rifle, I'll swing, and I'll shoot.
The hunter will don hearing protection designed to amplify the sounds of wild game while clipping the report of the rifles. A small backpack comes in handy to carry all the necessary gear for the hunt: gloves, ammunition, a camera, water, etc. Filling the loops provided in the pockets of your hunting jacket ensures instant access to ammunition, and a soft gun case helps to protect your rifle when moving from stand to stand. After loading the magazines, it's a good idea to check the light intensity of the red dot in the aim point sight, making sure it's in accordance with the ambient light conditions of your stand. On certain drives, the shooter will stand directly on the ground. In these instances, they are well advised to take the extra time to clear fallen leaves and twigs and to level their shooting position as much as possible.
When you're not on a high seat, but you're on a tree or by a tree, and you've got very unleveled ground, try and level it with the back of your heel, for example, to get as most level as possible, because the more level your feet are and the more straight your spine is, the better you'll shoot.
Conditions also play an important factor in shooting well. Cold weather is almost a guarantee on a driven shoot, but precipitation and wind can affect a hunter's shooting and their comfort.
Generally, the less that you can wear and the more agile you are, the better you're going to shoot. However, if you're freezing because you're not wearing enough and you're shaking, that's obviously also the wrong way to go. So to kind of find that perfect niche of that particular day and what you're wearing is really difficult. But when you get it right, it makes a huge difference.
North American hunters are used to shooting at relatively stationary game. Here, the goal is to create the steadiest rest possible, control your breathing, and slowly squeeze the trigger. But on a driven shoot, the skills required are much more akin to shotgun shooting. The proper stance, developing a smooth swing, learning the lead required for different distances, and following through on the shot all make for more success on fast-moving driven boar. Gun fit is important, regardless of your quarry or hunting method. The ability to mount your gun quickly and properly means more time to factor in all of the equations the shooter must make in split seconds. The choice of caliber is another consideration. While you want enough of a cartridge to perform an instant clean kill, speed is of equal importance.
Generally, I think from a caliber and a bullet perspective, the faster the bullet is, the better. At a 50-meter bore running full speed, that will give you that extra 20 centimeters of lead that you have to have for that animal to have that shot in the right place. That's a lot. Again.
Wasn't expecting anything else to happen. We had a group of boar come across. across the clearing, and I could only take the last two.
The ability to keep both eyes open is a tremendous advantage when dealing with multiple animals and thick forest. The hunter is able to take in much more of their surroundings when picking their shots.
Again, just talking about crops and wild boar and whatever. Pretty much the end of the drive. Suddenly we have a single Überläufer come back through the beetle line. Super exciting. Perfect situation for the aim point, because you have a lot of trees. It's maybe 90 meters away. And with the aim point, you have the space in between. You can really wait for the wild boar to come into a gap. And that's what I just did. It worked. So I'm super happy about it. Again.
Franz-Albrecht shoulders his rifle while he's obscured from the boar by the trees in front of him. First, he finds the aiming line. This he follows until he's an appropriate distance ahead of the animal and fires. In this case, the shot must be fired about 60 centimeters or 2 feet in front of the place where Franz-Albrecht plans to hit the boar. By doing this, he compensates for the distance the boar travels while the bullet flies toward him. The proper amount of lead varies with the distance to the target, as well as the boar's speed and angle toward the hunter. Shooting at static game requires a different strategy on driven shoots. When your quarry stops, the tactics may change, but your barrel keeps moving.
That's a Kyler. Is it a Kyler? Our wind was suddenly changing and pushed straight down. You could just see that the Kyler walked into our wind and stopped like that. They often do that. And in this kind of situation, I just take the red dot and I follow up from down into the bore and then press the trigger. So my barrel is moving while I take the shot, because I'm more steady than if I pinpoint where I want to hit. That's where an erratic movement starts within my aim.
The skills required to shoot driven boar at a high level take years to perfect, but the basics always remain the same. Be stealthy and quiet. Scout your stand's setup, prepare your gear in a consistent way, and know how it performs in a variety of conditions and scenarios. Practice at the range is where you learn your limitations. Shooting at targets is the time to push yourself and your skills. And if you've done enough of it, you'll have a good indication of what can be shot ethically and cleanly when the hunt begins.
Knowing your own abilities that you've hopefully found out about on a range and not in the wild, you should know at what distance and what speed you're comfortable at shooting an animal.
But even the most skilled shooters are wise to gauge themselves on a day-to-day basis. Shots that are possible when shooting at the top of your game might be wisely avoided on days when you're feeling less than 100%.
I wake up in the morning and I can look at my hands, and for example today, I would say it's a medium day. They're not completely still, they're not shaking, but I can sort of feel I'm good. I'm not at my best, but I'm also not bad. And you'll know that, either when you're going on shooting ranges quite a bit, or a sportsman would know that, you know? Somebody like a tennis player or whoever in any sport, he'll be able to tell you if he's having a really good day or not so good. Can't wait to get out there and see what we will see.
When it all comes together, few hunts display more impressive shooting skill. best hunters on driven game can take multiple boar from a single sounder, classing their quarry, cycling their bolt, and delivering instant kill shots in split seconds.
The interesting thing is, while it's happening, it almost feels like slow motion. When I then see the scene on a film, I'm sometimes surprised myself how fast it is or how quickly things happen, because when I'm doing it myself, it seems much slower.
Yes.
But everything happens in a reflex. I'm not thinking. It just happens. Once you have taken the first shot, everything happens just by itself. There's no clear thought, okay, now I take this one. After that, maybe it just happens. It's just like a reflex. It's just like...
Executing a safe, ethical hunt is the goal of everyone on a driven shoot. And a big part of that is the hunter knowing their limits and abilities on the stands. Despite the differences in language, traditions, methods, and terrain, one common thread emerged on every driven shoot: a love for the game and the woods they call home.
The interesting thing is we've been to so many different countries. I mean, Germany, Spain, France, Sweden, Austria, Romania, Croatia, Hungary. And no matter which country you go to, there's this total infatuation and respect for this particular animal species, which is wild boar. And we're all kind of connected in our incredible passion to live and hunt with this species. And then the dogs were barking in the background, and immediately he just turned.
Franz-albrecht Spielberg is a hunter and conservationist with a deep passion for wild boar. His hunting career began in his native Germany, right as wild boar populations began their dramatic rise. But even with considerable experience under his belt, traveling to hunts in different countries opened his eyes to the common thread all hunters feel, regardless of their hunting methods or quarry.
And the most amazing things that I got out of all of those trips were just the different people that we met and the stories that they told, and to see the excitement, the same excitement, even though I have no idea what they're saying because they're speaking in Romanian or Hungarian and stuff. And there's just this immediate understanding between two hunters, even though we're from completely different countries, we speak completely different languages, but there's still, you know, after that drive, you'll probably go up to him and, you know, and you just, you know, he'll speak to me in Romanian, I'll speak to him in German, and we'll both be saying the same thing, but we can't understand a word what we're saying, but we still know that that was just an amazing experience for both of us.
Driven shoots are difficult to pull off with consistent success. The ideal, from an ethical standpoint, is to take the required amount of game while causing minimal disruption to the animals of the forest. It means some tracts of land will only be hunted 1 or 2 days a year at most, and requires a level of competency and professionalism from all the players involved.
It seems so easy to think, okay, you have this 500 acres of forest, and all you do is you put guns all around it and maybe a few lines through it, and then you put some dogs into it, and, you know, that's it, you're gonna get your bag. It's so much more difficult than it sounds, and to get it right, it rarely happens that a day runs perfectly. Some things may go well, some things may well not go so well. It's an ongoing reorganization of what you're doing. Depending on which country or which area you are, a day of driven boar would be organized extremely differently. In Spain, for example, you would meet for breakfast at around 10 in the morning, and the drive may start at around 11:30, 12, and they would have one big drive that lasts 3 to 4 hours. Germany, you would probably meet at 7 in the morning when it's still dark, somewhere, and you'd have one drive in the morning, then you'd have lunch, and then another drive in the afternoon.
The boar themselves can vary widely as well. In general, the wilder the habitat and colder the winters, the bigger the boar will be.
An Überläufer in Germany would probably be a Frischling in Romania, and the biggest male boar in Romania will have live weights between 300 and 350 kilograms, which is unheard of in Germany.
The classing of wild boar must be done on the hoof before the hunter can be confident in taking the right animal. But once the game is down, a check of the teeth allows for an accurate estimation of age.
You see, this Überläufer, it's not, all four teeth are not at one length, so he's under 24 months. Just changed the teeth.
Yeah.
55, 60 kilo.
Perfect.
But thank you very much for letting them through.
Yeah, we have good films.
This is quite interesting here. It's a male Überläufer, and it's actually just turned 24 months. You can see that by the bottom four teeth. If they're in one line, you're talking about a 24-month-old boar at least. It's exactly in between an Überläufer and a very young Keiler. With Überläufer or Frischling would look like this. They just have a black point at the back, and the Überläufer are beginning to grow longer black hair, and once the boar gets older and older, it becomes a bushy big tail. So there's difference in sizes and the way they look in every area, and it can be very, very difficult to distinguish the differences between the boar if you've never hunted in an area before.
The variety of driven shooting on the European continent can astound even the most experienced of hunters.
Wow.
The terrain and the boar themselves are often dramatically different as you travel from country to country, and hunting methods and traditions can vary widely from place to place.
Our first day in France. We just got to the stand. I just put the bullet into the chamber. And before the drive had even started, 3 wild boar came to the crossing here. I think it was one big female, probably a big Keiler. But I only had my gun up for the last one, which was an Überläufer. And it's just great to be in a new country. We're gonna see new traditions, new way of doing things, new wild boar. I mean, I think they look very different to what we've seen in Hungary and Romania. And I can't wait to experience more of another way of hunting wild boar in Europe. I mean, in France, the experiences that we had, you know, the great food, great wine, also a lot of horn blowing. So within the drive, if the beaters see boar, there's a certain horn signal that then gets blown, so all the guns know there's boar at this part of the drive, or then they have a different signal for roe deer leaving this part of the drive and stuff. So you're standing on your stand and you constantly hear all these signals that for a German are really confusing. But that's just their tradition of how they do it. The beaters were blowing their horns 4 times, which means they see wild boar. Beaters blew their horn 4 times, and one wild boar crossed quite fast. I'm 99% certain it was a female. And then about 2 minutes later, another one crossed. And there I'm 99.99% sure it was a female. We're not shooting females today, so we let them pass. But it would have been a beautiful situation. Especially since they passed in the open. You don't have to worry about trees or anything. You can just pick them up from behind. Follow through and press the trigger. Ideal shooting situation. So I hope there'll be more.
Super nice hunting here in France. It's been a lot of fun. New traditions and new style of hunting. It's very, very beautiful. The food's fantastic and great wine. And some fantastic boar hunting. A lot of fun.
And while there are differences in the way countries conduct driven hunts, many of those traditions transcend borders. Across the continent, respect for the game is paramount.
Every European country, you'll have slightly different traditions. In Germany, for example, there's a lot of honor to the game once it's been shot. So you take a twig, for example, and you place it in the boar's or deer's mouth after it's been killed, which is sort of its last bite to eat, which you grant it as a sign of respect. At the end of the day, the animals will be laid out, and as a sign of respect, again, you blow different melodies on the horns, and there's a different melody for each species. And then at the end, there's a general melody which will end the hunt. But for us, it's quite important to have that sort of ethical side of honoring the game at the end and not just, immediately putting it into the cooler.
Europe's taste for wild game far exceeds that of their American cousins. On driven boar shoots, all of the game is processed and sold to markets and restaurants, and demand far outstrips supply.
Germany itself only produces about 60 to 70% of the game meat that the population would like to eat. There's more demand than we can supply at the moment, so everything really gets eaten.
The demand for meat dovetails neatly with the importance of clean, ethical kill shots. The preferred shot on driven boar is considered high and forward, a head or neck shot that results in an instant, painless kill for the animal and the ability to harvest the maximum amount of meat from the game. But no matter where a driven shoot takes place, a hunter must be prepared for a variety of conditions once in the stand. Some are more favorable than others. No one likes getting rained on for hours at a time, and the cold will exhaust even the hardiest of outdoor enthusiasts. But the driven boar hunter revels in a layer of snow, as long as it's not too fresh.
Snow is amazing because you can see them better, you'll be able to shoot them better. The contrast is just much, much better. What you don't want is the first new snow in a year, because once the boar, let's say the day before your hunt, you suddenly get half a meter of snow. Usually what the boar do is they just don't move at all and they have the snow above them, and it's difficult for the dogs to find them. Ideal would be a situation where the snow has been there for a couple of weeks, and the night before, it freezes over. So you do hear when the boar move in the snow. That would be the ideal situation.
Just so beautiful to have these dark boar on this light snow. And the contrast also makes it easier to aim. Because usually when you have dark ground and dark boar, it's not so easy to see the difference between the ground and the boar. With the snow, it's actually easier to shoot. But it's also just so beautiful.
The boar use the conditions to their advantage as well. A forest littered with leaves will often give away their position if the hunter listens closely enough. But the boar are listening as well.
If you don't have any snow, anything to do with -0 degrees Celsius the night before is great, because if you have the leaves frozen, for example, you'll be able to hear those animals really well. Downside is the animals also hear you really well getting to your stands, the bus is driving in, etc., so they'll be on the move quicker too.
Wild boar are renowned for their intelligence, and what works on one drive or on one particular day may not work at all on the next.
I don't know how they do it, but they find loopholes in your system almost every year. And when you've had, let's say, a good year from our perspective, where you've taken off the whole quota in one day and you think now you've perfected it, I promise you, the season after that, something will go so wrong and you might even get a third of your quota because the boar have done something that is so different from how they did the year before, and you can't work out why they did it, and you're back to square one. Well, that's part of what makes it so interesting, that you're dealing with an incredibly intelligent animal that will adapt to whatever you're doing and will learn and, then get better.
Incredible. That boar has been sitting in front of us 10 meters away, hiding on a little bush until the terrier found it. Incredible.
The wise hunter stays in the game until the very end of the drive. Even after the beaters have moved through the line, the old Kylers often have a few tricks of their own.
Let's say you're close to a thicket. The beaters come into that thicket. Yes, there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of noise. The dogs are after some boar. You might get a chance or two if you're lucky. But once the beaters have moved through and you can just sort of hear them in the background and they're sort of with other stands, A lot of the boar, if they're not directly confronted by a dog, they'll just sort of, they'll duck down, almost like in a trench. And once the beaters and dogs have moved over them, and once they think everything is quiet and safe, they'll get up and slowly move away. And that's actually my favorite time in the drive.
Die Job eerst.
Wild boar truly are a worthy and challenging quarry, offering the hunter a lifetime of study, practice, and learning if they want to hunt them successfully. Their numbers require management, and the meat makes excellent table fare. It's no wonder their pursuit has taken Europe by storm. And now, that obsession is spreading.
I get asked quite a bit about why did we do this, or why do the Wild Boar Fever films, like why get involved and stuff. There's a definite movement that we've helped to nurture along the last decade of these films, where people realized, okay, there's certain levels that I can reach of how to shoot a driven boar, and I can get much better at this if I just, go to a training facility once or twice a year. If that is the case, then I think that's a success, because we will be better at what we do. We will become more professional. From the animal side, it will be much more ethical from a hunting perspective. From a food source perspective, we will have better meat at the end of the day, because the animals are shot better, and will be much more effective in taking the quota that we need to regulate the population.